Hey everyone, good evening, and welcome you all to our another meetup session of Azure Developer Community. And for today's session, we have Monojit from Microsoft, who will be guiding and leading us on the topic of enterprise process automation using DevOps. So, before we get started with today's session, I'll just brief you all about what is this Azure Developer Community, as it is under this meetup session comes under that. So this community initiative was started on 26 January this year with an motive to help each and everyone in the country to learn, network, and upskill. So by being in this community, you can attend regular developer focused events here and learn on various technologies from key experts and community contributors here. And also, you can grow your network by sharing your knowledge and ideas with like minded people here. And also, you can upskill by giving back to the community by sharing your experiences and knowledge with other people by upscaling and empowering them. And we are spread across in 102 cities of India. And these communities are spearheaded by our amazing organizers who help us to drive this sessions and help others to also to learn in this journey. And also, we have a speakers panel here in the community where speakers on various technologies, expertise come and here give talks. So, similarly, we have Monojit today, who will be giving an amazing session. So, without any further delay, I would like to bring Monojit on stage. Yeah. So, hi, Monojit.
Hey, hi Shefali. Hi everyone.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm fine, Shefali. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So before starting with the session, Monjit, please can you give us a brief introduction about yourself and what session you have today in for us? Yeah, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shefali. Thanks everyone for joining. So myself, Monojit, I work in Microsoft as a cloud solution architect, primarily focusing on cloud native technologies, and that means all containers and serverless app services, DevOps, mobile applications. So these are my area which I love to work most. Although my current role need me to go a breadth of everything, but this is the area which I want to focus or love to focus more on that. Today we would be talking about the process automation through DevOps, how you do that in enterprises. We will talk about some of the features that the DevOps tools on Azure brings in for us. Right? We will be unbiased on the actual tool selection. We will not talk about it, although obviously the tool references will come in. But our focus will be to understand how DevOps can be utilized to automate your end-to-end process, not just the code check-in and the code checkouts and the deployments, but just beyond that. Okay, so that is a short introduction of what we are going to do today in this 1 hour time frame. And since it's a virtual session, please feel free to post your questions as I think Shefali and Rohit will guide you. So accordingly, we will take up the questions at the end because it's a short time frame. I will keep 10 minutes at least for asking or taking up the questions at the end. Yeah.
Sure, Monjit. Thank you. Introduction. So, hey everyone, if any of you have any queries in between the session or when the session is going on, you can comment down in the chat section here, and surely Monjit will, at the end of the session, he will look into it. So, I will bring the presentation here, Anji, and you can start off. Right?
Sure, Shefali. Let me switch my screen. Let me know. Just help me because I will not be able to see that screen. Is it fully visible,
Yes, yes,
everyone?
it is.
Great, and my voice is also clear. I hope, right?
Right.
Great. Okay. Great, everyone. So, without much delay, we will start discussing about the DevOps solutions, and as I said, right, the process automation and all. So basically, the main reason for all these discussions around DevOps that started off 10 years or 10, 12 years back was primarily to cater to the needs of the modern application design, right? The engineering is now getting more and more evolved. It's not the old only client server technology or doing some monolithic applications. The engineering is doing a lot of stuff. And as engineering is evolving, the new type of applications, new softwares are getting built, right? So that's where the need for these type of DevOps solutions or various DevOps solutions and related tools, not only DevOps, the DevOps and its related components and services, those are now imperative that we know how these things work and we also know the best practices around them, right? Now, if you look at the current application landscape, right, all over the world, I mean, across all the cloud providers and everyone, you see that cloud native is one of the way that we build our applications. Cloud native means containers, serverless app services, then intelligent apps. That means you bring your own custom models or you use ready-made models to deploy. Models means I'm saying. Artificial intelligence and all the cognitive models, right? You deploy them. The models are big in size. Sometimes uh, they come with their own processes. Each model comes like an application, right? They load data. They have its other processes inbuilt into it. So they need more scaling. They need better performance as well as they need to be deployed on multiple different disparate systems, right? So that is these are the two primary things. Then we also have the customer centric applications, like more like bots or I mean which are using these intelligent applications or cloud native applications. Those are mostly front end applications. They might be help desk applications, bot, everything is bot, right? Somebody said, some experts commented that all the mobile applications or desktop applications one day will only be bots. So it will be a bot application only. That's what we are thinking of. Now, if that is the way or that is the kind of improvement that has happened over last 10, 12 years in terms of software development, then that means the deployment of that also needs to change, right? There are numerous instances where we have seen that how applications basically uh, got into trouble. Big applications from great enterprises have failed because just they didn't have a proper DevOps mindset, right? So the first and foremost thing is that to understand what is DevOps, because earlier it was only CI/CD. People used to talk about continuous integration and continuous development, right? Now it's beyond that, right? It's about the entire process. If we can automate or control through some tools. So when that comes into play, um, I will breeze pass through these things because we have already discussed. But then it is now the challenge that we need to address. So what are the challenges that we have? Very quickly, I will address these challenges and move on to some examples, basically. Uh, Now, the first thing is that the business needs faster deployment cycle and continuously innovate. So if the application is now being deployed onto cluster, onto an Kubernetes cluster or on Azure as an app service or as a function, a serverless app, uh, it is working fine. That's good. What about the next version? Is the next version going to break the earlier version? Is the next version going to be still working on top of it? Are we only deploying the delta or we have to deploy the entire stuff? So those are the questions or challenges that people have been dealing with for not only for last few years. It's long time discussion. The moment we started the client server technologies and all these were the things that were always happening, right? It's not about one desktop application running for 10 years. Now it is more flexible and flamboyant. So in that case, that means We need a solution that will bring in more frequent and stable releases. This is the first and foremost thing. Every enterprise, whatever be your marketing catch line of DevOps or sales catch line of DevOps, the ultimate technology benefit is this. And this is the requirement from every customer. I hope since you guys are also facing a lot of customers, you would know that this is the basic question. Everybody is asking this. Frequent release, stable release, both are needed, right? I would be doing some companies, some big companies, the startups to the major customer facing companies. They are doing almost 10 plus releases on every day for one product, only for one product. So you can imagine how frequent that would be. And each of the release has to be stable because that might be 10 releases not for one region, one product getting deployed onto multiple regions, and all has to work, right? So those type of things. The failure rate has to get reduced and all. Uh, now that means the it's a business need and the technology has to respond. That's where DevOps come into play. Uh, Now, when it comes to play, that means there are a lot of challenges because the first and foremost challenge is the dependency of the software. So, as you guys are also, um, you know, doing or probably traversing between the developer world and the operations world, um, you know that the biggest challenge for any software on any technology stack, whether it is Node.js or .NET or Java or even mobile applications like Xamarin or iOS or Android, the biggest challenge is the dependency of the software. A software will not break if there is no dependency. So if I have a code base like this, let me know if the switch of the screen works or not. Uh, is my Visual Studio Code window is visible? Anyone, if yes or no is fine.
Yes,
Shefali,
Abhishek.
right? It's visible, right? Yeah, I just wanted to check the switching works here as well. Okay, thanks. If my software is a very standard software like this, where I have a function application, don't look at the other folders. Don't get uh, you know driven by the other folders and all this. Just remove it from your mind. This is just one application, validate OCR application. It's a function app. So if I extend this, it is nothing but a function, and which is a .NET function. If that is the case, then I'm fine. I mean, that is the ideal thing, that I'm dealing with only one function and then I'm deploying it anywhere. I can do all this stuff, right? But the moment I say that no, this function also has the dependencies and serious dependencies. I mean, if I change the version of my durable task, this is just a library. I don't even get into that, but just some using it as a reference. So if I change the version of this, it might break my application. So that's the dependencies are the biggest thing which bogs us down when we actually think of uh, doing frequent releases, right? And stable releases. Frequent release is still fine. The stable release, frequent stable release. So that means I need to have a solution that can help me in handling this stuff, right? So that is one thing. And then the other thing is the configuration, right? So even in this application, you could see now this is a simple Nave application. That's why I'm using it just to explain. These might be my configuration thing, right? Now these configuration parameters are easy. It's an OCR API key application, OCR API key that my function uses to do some OCR processing, some URL which actually calls the OCR API in the backend, and some other parameters, right? Now these are secret parameters. I'm still using it hard coded because okay, anyway, I will talk about it, that how we handle this situation. But the point here is these parameters might change. My instrumentation key for app insights might have expired or deleted or something has happened, right? So these configuration changes and the drifting of this configuration. So I need more parameters uh, my code needs even more control of the parameters. So those are some of the challenges I'm just saying, which basically have forces us to find a solution like DevOps, which brings all these under one umbrella so that we can manage it better, right? And the developer challenges. I mean, I talked about developer and IT challenges both basically. So it's integrated, interdependent infrastructure is one challenge for IT. Configuration is one challenge. Collaboration between dev and ops team. This is what I always talk about in any session, whether it is DevOps or whether I'm talking on containers or any other related technologies. This is the biggest challenge. The third point on the left, the dev and the ops guys are always at loggerheads, always at the fight, right? Uh, I mean, dev is saying it's not my problem. Ops is saying how do you say that it's not your problem? It's definitely your problem. So that tussle goes on, right? So these are IT challenges. On the developer side, also I talked about like the dependency on the libraries, the release cycles. One bug comes up at the QA team, which when I was also into the developer hat, I still remember, right? When the QA team tells me that there is a bug at 5 o'clock in the evening, that's the last thing that I want. Right? I'm about to go back to my home, and then I got to know there is a bug, and I know that if I fix the bug even in next 10 minutes, it can create another uh, three more bugs, right? So I have to be very careful about it. So all these dependencies, and even if my architecture is fully object oriented, following all the design patterns, these are the things that are still going to be there always. Now, to avoid that, and then definitely industry. So, IT developer, all these things gone. Industry also is asking that, hey, forget about your challenges. I need more monitoring. I need more observability. I need to see the containers in details. I need the support. Beyond your given technologies, I need to be more open source. So, lot of things. It's just a tip of the iceberg which they are asking, right? So then what happens, and then finally also the need for the compliance. So this is also we will see today. I mean, what I'm telling you now, all these challenges, we will see how do we tackle these challenges in DevOps, and then also we go and do that the process automation end to end, right? Now, this is another thing, which is uh, probably not from the business, not from industry directly, but from the security team, your procurement, your security, your licensing team. They come back and say that uh, my your application that you developed is not compliant with the policies that I have. So these governance teams requirements are even trickier and even critical before you release it, right? I have seen, I have been part of an application where when DevOps was not a buzzword in the industry, I'm talking about 10, 9, 8, 10, 8, 10 years back. And then I saw the customer pulling down an entire application from Apple App Store just because they had a small data lag in the monitoring server, right? At that point of time, it was Google Analytics was very popular, only a solution or some flurries and all. So one of the solution basically was giving a data which is slightly deviating, but the customer was a customer facing media and entertainment giant, so they could not have an application with that amount of deviation because that was giving a completely wrong picture. And when we saw actually the issue from just coming out of my developer hat or architect hat, I could understand, oh my, that's the problem. That means this is where the entire graph is changing. It is giving a completely wrong impression because more and more users are using and clicking those functional buttons, right? And the for every click, if there is an error. So just an example that if we are not compliant, if we are not doing the proper monitoring or analytics of the application, then there is no way to go into production. If it is there, it has to be rolled back. So that also brings the capability of resiliency in our software design. Our software has to be resilient so that we can roll back. We could roll back because it was only a mobile application, But what about an API, right? Rollbacking an API means you have to take care of a lot of things, right? So with keeping all these things in mind, basically this is what a DevOps taxonomy says, right? You need to have a continuous planning, right? You need to have continuous planning. That means you would have a project plan behind the scene with the sprints, and I think you guys know about these things. I will not go into that. Continuous planning of that, which is the culture that provides. Then it would have a continuous integration and the delivery. That means you would whenever you change into your code, it will be getting prepared for deployment. That is the integration piece. That is the build will happen. The binaries will be created. Then you would go into the delivery mode, which is the deployment, continuous delivery. And then the post delivery work is even more important. That's where your architecture and the resilience and all these things will come in, right? Post deployment or at the time of deployment, how you are basically maintaining that your software product quality is great. You are not leaving any stones unturned. You are actually checking all your the problem areas. That's the key for any DevOps. And Azure DevOps or GitHub, these kind of solutions that you get on Azure, on Azure ecosystem, they address these things particularly, right? Uh, we will come to that slide later, but just in short, uh, these are all the four or like I would say all the pillars that we should always be worried about. If we do not go into each one of these, that's fine. It's not that everything is relevant for your organization or for your customer, but majority of them is, right. The quality, the security, the collaboration. The collaboration is often not looked at very hugely, but when you are on at ground zero, you would see that without collaboration, how do you do that? So we have a lot of good integration points. We'll talk about it. And the improvement of the application. So every time you do a change and then you bring in new features, that should also be stable. So that is something is uh, these are the capabilities and the practices. What Azure DevOps brings in, we have Azure boards for exactly what you saw in the previous slide, the planning piece of it. Then we have Azure pipelines, which you saw in the second pillar, which is the integration and the delivery. We have Azure repos, or you can bring in other repositories also like GitHub and all. We are talking about Azure repos. Similarly GitHub repos. As I said, I'm not going to talk about any particular solution, DevOps solution on Azure. Both are great, and it's we will be unbiased for today's session on which one to use and all. Purpose of the session is not that, it's general DevOps, right? But since we are talking on Azure, yes, so on Azure repos and GitHub repos, both bring you the capability to manage your the software uh, lifecycle better, right? And then the test plans. Uh, Test plans, we all know that the test plans basically allow us to create our testing strategy, then do all the functional and non-functional testing, and then uh, you know then allow the application to go on production only if everything is successful. And artifacts is something that we will talk about it. For now, if you were really excited to know what the artifact is basically the packages. So you maintain NuGet packages, you can be doing with Maven, or you can be doing some Node.js packaging, the package.json. All these are from the deep systems. They're all mutually exclusive, right? Uh, and they're maintained. Their life cycle is maintained in a completely different way, but all have one thing common, that they all have a server where they store these things. So we are leveraging that, and we are saying that okay, Azure artifacts, Azure DevOps as a server will give you that benefit. You can manage all your artifacts into one location rather than going to NuGet and do this. You mention it here, and all the updates from the respective repository, Azure artifact will maintain. And what your team will do, instead of managing it going to the separate libraries like NuGet or package.json or Maven, they would all go to Azure Artifact and get the latest version from there. So it's just another, the repository of uh, repository of the packages. Quickly, I will touch upon how Microsoft, within Microsoft, we do some of the best practices, not everything, but some of the best practices which will give you an idea, and then we will move on to some of the examples. In between, I would just quickly check if there is any uh, questions or anything at this point of time. Okay, no major question, I believe. Manish, is my voice not? Is it better now? Sorry, somebody says voice is not great. So let me know if it is clear now. Okay. Sorry for that. So, so within Microsoft, what we do basically is that there are four or five things we always follow. One of the thing um, is to have a clarity and also listen to our customers. We always listen to our customer. What is the problem? And then we are always transparent. So whenever the product is about to be released or getting released, and this is one of the very good practice that every software vendor should follow, right? Instead of you you know creating and deploying applications without looking at the customer's feedback is one of the biggest challenge, because then there will be always a gap. So knowing your customers challenges and then what they're expecting, so you might have built something which is working great but not meeting the customer's expectation. So there in your Azure DevOps, you would have always, so if I go back to my um, window again, and if I open my one of my project, this is my Azure DevOps organization. I'm going to this project here, right? So you can see that Azure DevOps already provides a lot of various ways that you can interact with within your team and even outside your team also, right? Seeing a bit of sluggishness in my uh, so you can actually create your wiki pages from here. You can code, you can actually use this wiki to communicate with your customer as well as within your team members, right? We also have integration capability with teams. Now, I'm just trying to highlight that what are the things that you can do to make sure that you collaborate within your team as well as outside your team to get feedback and then improve your software. So it's just a standard wiki that you can always use to have your documents, your diagrams, everything uploaded here, right? And then the other important thing, let me switch back to my, I think I went the wrong one. So let me open uh, another application maybe. So the other option that you should always use is a dashboard. Now this dashboard is just created as and when you can basically build this dashboard just by clicking few buttons, right? If you are using it, you already know that, right? Whatever you are doing on your project, you can basically create a widget and then put it over there. But what is good part about it is that all your project team members, so if I go to my project settings and if I have my teams, right, and I can add multiple members into the team, there are different groups. So based on that, your team members who are part of this project, they would have a unified view of this dashboard, right? So dashboard gives you an option to uh, com- uh, you know uh, give a quick view of uh, the entire project. Now, different people will be interested to know different sections of that project. Somebody might be only thinking about the user stories and all this stuff. Somebody would be more on the bugs. So if I click on the bugs, I will be getting to know that, okay, there is a there is an issue already happening, which is unassigned, which I can assign it to myself and do work, or the stakeholders who are responsible for uh, talking about the quality of the product. So they would be checking these and getting to know this quite easily, right? I will talk about one more important thing, which let me come to that later. But yeah, so maybe I think you can see the wiki here also. The good part of the wikis is that it is good for everyone in the team as well as outside. So outside in the sense, if somebody is joined as a guest user from your customer end or your the other vendors end, so they can be part of it. And the good part is you can share these information, right? Uh, like this is just a standard information. You can have your documents and diagrams, everything uploaded. Anybody joining the team, that is another challenge for developers, right? Anybody joining the team, how do they know that what is going on in the project? So this wiki can be your one of the place to do that. Now the the other important thing in terms of in terms of the clarity part of it, right? We always say that you try to measure not everything, whatever is needed for you to measure. Talk to the customer and get to know what they are expecting. These are the standard, right? You try to measure what the performance, the efficiency of that, how the entire project flow is working, the whether the customer is satisfied or not. Those type of things you should measure. Don't try to measure something which is not related to the operations, right? Which are very specific to project management. You might be tracking it into the board section. So you can see Azure DevOps has these two uh, segments, right? One segment on top, we call this extended DevOps, or I personally call it extended DevOps. And whereas the section from repos till pipelines and test plan, these are my real DevOps. I mean, the DevOps that we do day to day. But the extended DevOps piece is the project management, which earlier looked at uh, separately from DevOps. Now it's part of the solution so that you don't have to go to some other disparate system, do the management over there and then come back. So you can all have an integrated view here, right? But anything that should be measured as a management piece, a project management piece of it, do it separately, but only focus on the measurement of the stuff. So the parameters which I was showcasing here, these are something which are important. But if you look at the completed hours, the line of code, the capacity of the team, these are something that is not exactly a DevOps stuff that you need to measure, but you need to do that. These are not something that are not irrelevant to the project. It's relevant for the project management, not for the actual software. So you should basically segregate these two things in such a way that you can manage both of them, right? So that's the reason I said that when you so whatever software I have built in, right, all my pipeline analytics, that how much of the pipeline has run properly. So if I go to the overview section, what was that? Yeah. So this is my entire project on the statistics on the right hand side, right? Now, out of this, my pull request, my commits, all these problems and the bugs and all these are my something which I'm related directly, right? But if something which is, as I told you, right, the stuff which are not so relevant, they should be, or which are specific to project management, you should maintain it here, like we are doing it here in the dashboard section. And then you can go down a bit, right? You can do, you can have a look at the boards, see what are the features or which one of these are, unassigned, but still lying in the backlog. So those type of stuff is more of a project management which you should handle over there, right? Okay. Now, I'm just, passing through some of the slides because I wanted to take you to more of a sample kind of a thing. These are something when I share, you can always go through it later. The important thing is to also have a zero distance approach. So talk to customer. I think we talked about it. So more you use the forums, the Teams integration with the Azure DevOps. So now we can actually uh, have the integration with Azure DevOps directly from Teams, as well as you probably if you are using it, you know that. Otherwise, let me show you quickly. You can go to your, um, uh, you know, go to uh, the service connections, and from there also you can actually, connect to your connect to the teams, and then create a complete channel. So basically, what will happen? So whenever there is a bug or anything created, you come to you get notified in the team. The teams get notified into the team's software, and then they can collaborate and then update it again from there, right? So now from there onwards, the other important stuff which we always talk about in DevOps is the breaking of the team, right? How you divide your team into multiple um, multiple groups of people who are relevant to your software development, right? Like uh, for let me show you an example also here as well. So So if I go to the pipelines for any of the projects, right, I will come to this pipeline in detail because this is one of the thing that we have implemented for a big customer, and a couple of customers in this way, and then we saw a great benefit in terms of software lifecycle and all this stuff. So we'll come to that. But if you look at the pipeline, any pipeline that I open here, right, uh, I can bring in. Uh, I can manage the security of that pipeline. Now, this pipeline is responsible for deploying or building my applications and all. Here, as you can see, I have already inbuilt groups. These groups are standard from Azure DevOps or GitHub. They know these type of groups should exist at least, right? So you can always use these existing groups and bring your teams under any one of these heads, or you can bring in groups from other services. So I have created a build service group and then put users underneath. I can also create groups in Azure AD, right? So if I can do that, I don't know whether that tenant would work in a separate tenant. Let it open. In the meantime, let me talk on this. So we can actually bring in uh, the teams from my Azure AD into this entire flow. So if I have a team structure like this, we always manage it in here just because there is no confusion. So what happens that all authentication, the rollback access control, and everything is taken care of um, from the Azure Ready perspective, all in one place, right? So let me get into that. In the meantime, let me check if there are any question. Okay. Yeah. So if I go to my Azure, I'm just opening a separate tenant because my Microsoft internal tenant doesn't allow me to be an admin or owner of this admin of this Azure already. So I have created a separate tenant which is free, which doesn't have any subscription in it, but I use it for all my authentication needs. So if I go to the users or groups rather, sorry, if I go to the groups, so you can see I have multiple groups here, but the first three, what you see, a cluster admin or a cluster architect or cluster developer, because I have created these groups for an AKS cluster, I created this type of grouping, right? You can bring in uh, groups specific to the projects across your organization. So you can have a stakeholder group, a completely build administrator group who are shared across multiple teams. So it doesn't matter that how you handle them. You just need to bring those guys uh, under any one of these heads, or bring the group here as a separate group. It will be displayed here if you come in. And then you decide which one to allow, like build administrators. These are all standard. You can always change them. But the point here is that is the way you should control access to your project and bring in more security into the team. So all different teams working, but having a very controlled environment working on this. So this is important. Um, Now, the other thing is that, um, like we have a, sorry, yes. So like we have a the program management and the development and the testing team, then we would have more focus on engineering and the operations guys, right? So those type of different teams will also come in. And engineering guys are only for the product team. They are building the product. So you need to bring in those type of thing. And then the feature team is most important. We will see that in an example. That feature team is most important, who are maybe only working on specific features, then the new features that is coming in, that will be integrated into the main product by the engineering later on, right? So they should be a separate team also with a varying degree of access. And this is also, we always suggest that instead of fully horizontal, the UI team working on the UI, API team working on the API, data team working on the data, they all have great knowledges, but they can always collaborate. And that collaboration is the vertical piece of it, right? So where the teams know each other, teams can, the success of a project, um, apart from using the proper DevOps tool, is also to leverage the tool the best of its capability, right? So Azure DevOps, GitHub, they both have these type of capabilities. You can actually have a team across different tech stack, right? As you have seen, you can create maybe a build administrator team. Then from the coding also, you can group them in such a way that the cross technology people can work and collaborate better, right? And if and more they collaborate better, the productivity of the team increases. Otherwise this is not a very productive team, right? All working in silos, and these silos bring in a lot of challenges, which you will see later. But this is what, so this is the change in the entire team structure, right? We have the cross discipline teams. They are self managing. Then um, you know the teams are all small, 10, 12 members, each having varying degree of responsibility. But as I said, they also can um, intersect. There is an intersection between these two, so or all these teams, so that they can collaborate and then share the code, and that basically improves the quality of the software ultimately, right? Because if UI and API are completely segregated, which used to be even 7, 8 years back, is always a problem, always a big gap. So if they work hand in hand, which are now basically with the containers in place, um, more and more containerized applications rolling out, it's always a joining hand of disparate teams into one, right? Uh, Okay, we will talk about these things later, or maybe I can just skip them later also, because it's all standard, straightforward stuff. I will take you to something which is very, very important to understand. We'll come to that. Now, what I wanted to show you in the meantime, just maybe I can pause for a. Yeah, I think I will answer that question, RS. I will take that up. Good question. So now, the other thing is that, so what we have done for one of the customers, I just wanted to highlight that first, right? This is purely in terms of the DevOps process. The project management piece is not here in my sample because this is my subscription. They have done extensive good work in terms of project management, but I'm not going into the details of that because that's quite standard. You all know what needs to be done, and our tool is providing a lot of features. The important thing that we had done on top of the existing thing that Azure DevOps provides was to basically manage the pipelines in an extremely granular fashion. So if you look at the pipelines here, and I hope you are all familiar with the CI/CD kind of a thing, right? So CI is this uh, like whenever I make some changes in my code, this is the build pipeline that gets executed. The naming, first of all, the naming convention, you can see that, right? Which environment, right? Which environment, and is it, it's a CI pipeline, the purpose, everything is named accordingly. And then after that, let me click on that. And after that, what we do here is, if I try to edit the pipeline, see, the first and most important thing is this one, right? Uh, Now, it might be a bit of debatable statement, but this is what I'm sharing, what I have faced uh, in my work with various customers. Uh, we can use hosted machines, right? Azure pipeline machines, as you can see, we can select that. But I'm using a self-hosted machine. Why? Because majority of the applications that you deploy on Azure or any cloud, they need security, they need isolation. So in my case, it was maybe the private cluster of AKS. This cluster, if I try to access from the portal, I will not be able to do that because it is a private cluster. It doesn't allow me to access any one of you. You can see it is not allowing me because it's a private cluster. So I can't even see the namespaces and the workloads and all. I have to get into a machine which can do that for me. I don't know if that is, the session is disconnected. Let me connect the session in the meantime. But the point here is that until and unless I make sure that my jump server, I have a jump server, created and then access from there. But that is for my developers access. How do I automate that process? So that means I need to have a, a machine like this where, okay, just give me a sec. I think my connection is for a different machine. Let me connect it separately. So the point here is, the moment you have a, this is my DevOps machine. Okay, this is my DevOps machine. I have a self-hosted agent, all running in a, it is running on Azure, but it is paired with my cluster. So entire communication that is happening with my cluster is over a private endpoint, or a private network rather. I mean, what I mean to say is all sitting either on a peered network or on the same VNet. So that means whatever I am doing, if I am doing some kind of, if I want to see the status and all, it's all happening, and the code downloads and the execution of the code, everything is happening within that, uh, within the machine itself. It's not happening anywhere outside. Okay. Now, that is one part of security. So that means you need to make sure that you have a machine which is, where was that? Sorry. Yeah. So you need to have your, uh, yeah. So you need to have your self-hosted agent mapped so that you can make it secure. Second point, in the release pipeline, if I go to this folder view, you will see the how we have actually uh, make sure that all our uh, the entire process is sequential. So if you can see, we are doing the 0th step. That means if any new member joining in, they know that this is something that I have to do at the basic step, right? And this is the setup. So this is a setup of an AKS cluster, or it can be setup of an infrastructure also, right? This is my update infrastructure. Anything that I want to update, all my pipelines will be part of this group. With this, and then all other stuff like cluster, the rollback access control, the network policies, the monitoring, everything we have grouped separately, all separate pipelines, and with varying degree of access. So that means a stakeholder can access monitoring, not the developers. Developers will not have access. So Here in this case, I don't have that entire team structure, but I'm showing you how we have done that. So if you go to the security, and from security itself, you can decide who of the team can access to this one. So this is one of the important things: security at the pipeline level, right? As well as at the project level. With that, if I open which one I was talking about, yeah, maybe this project. This is a simple sample application, sorry, a function application. You would see two important things here. You can see that the same approach what I saw, what you saw in the AKS cluster concept. Here also the same thing. I am running uh, the same project. I have two different pipelines. One for entire infrastructure automation. So this project, this pipeline is going to deploy my entire setup. It's just a publishing the artifact here, but its purpose is to copy all the files that are needed for setting up the infrastructure. And the corresponding release pipeline, if I try to edit that, you will see this is doing the main job. And some of the important things we have mentioned here. It is a setting up of a script. This is my ARM template. Sorry, this is a PowerShell script that is running, which internally deploys the entire infrastructure for me, right? This pipeline will not be accessed by a developer, only for the architects. And in that, we are also adding lot of other structure. If you can look at the different steps in between, like we have the manual intervention step. So at every step, whenever the infrastructure architect is trying to deploy an application, right, they would have to be very careful. So once they run the script and they're trying to hand over this to the development team, you can have a manual intervention step like this to show them that. So if I can show you how the release pipelines actually got run. So uh, let me quickly open. I'm just running out of time, so I quickly touch upon this thing. So you can see the setup job has finished with setup script. Then manual intervention popped me with this message that have you done these things? Now these jobs are something outside your DevOps. How you are managing your key vault, whether you are adding your keys in the key vault or not. But that is a warning to the infrastructure guys to complete this before they hand it over to the development team. So always a check that you need to put in into this thing, right? And then finally, when you hand over these to the development team, they are running. This is my development team's release. So it is named as setup. That is my infrastructure team. And this is for development team CD. They would they will basically have a single job to deploy the function. That's true. But this is where the things are quite interesting and important. So you can add your gates. You can add your gates over here. I think I added a gate in a different project. Sorry, let me just go back to that quickly. So in my release pipeline, I can actually add, and this is very important, team, to do that. So I can actually add, um, you know, gates saying that if these conditions are not satisfied, the release will not go. So that means at every step, it's not about only CI/CD and deployment. It's about how you make your gating and the checks, streamline. So if I go a pre-deployment approval, I will add maybe the email address of myself saying I am part of the team. I should always get an email only when I approve. I'm the approver. After the approval, it will go through the gates. And what the gates are doing? Gates are waiting for a query item. See, this query item is very important. Until and unless this query item is satisfied, I will not allow the release to happen. And how the query item is created? That's where I said that you should always fall back on the extended DevOps, right? So that's my board. My board, the project management board, there I have queries created. So these queries, okay, all queries. So in these queries, you would see I have queries in this folder which says, okay, so if my queries run, I can't see the query. Oh no, I am in a different project. Okay, let me open this one and quickly show you the queries here. Yeah, so I have multiple queries. You can see the critical bugs is one of the query. So if this is not done, if this is not in a resolved state, it is now unassigned. It has to be assigned and resolved. I will not allow the release to happen. So that means where different teams across multiple geo is working, this is an extremely important step. Okay. Uh, Before I stop for this thing, let me quickly take you to some of the architectural stuff so that you there is a lot of content first of all into this, so you can always go through it when you have I mean when you get this deck. It's not easily to cover in the short span of time, but what I want to highlight here is some of the architectures. Sorry for the uh, quick pass on to this one, just a minute. Yeah. So the two things I would always try to highlight is how we suggest our, like apart from CI/CD, the other thing that you need to think about is the branching strategies, right? So this is one of the things that you need to keep in mind. You have multiple options of doing that, but this is the best practice. You can see on the left-hand side, top left corner, we are talking about a simple branching strategy, but features, bug fixes, all separate. So your main branch is going in a linear fashion, but your feature is separate. They are getting merged into main. Your bugs fixes going in separate parallel line merged into main. This is okay. I think you all know that. On the right hand side is even more interesting and important stuff. We are not uh, making the release. Okay, you should look at the bottom diagram first. We are not making the release from the main branch. This is an important concept. People always make this mistake. Don't release from the main branch. We are taking a separate release branch, release 20, which is for my release. So main branch will never be used for release. Main branch is still main branch. It still flows linearly, right? The release happens, any bug fixes in the release happens then, and ultimately release will stay as is. Or if there is anything that needs to be merged to main branch, we will do it after a lot of checks and pull requests. And then finally, again, your other development life cycle will continue. So at any point of time, you would always see that your release branch, main branch, and feature branches all go in parallel. And that's where you create the segregation of the responsibilities. Some simple architectures quickly before I stop for Q&A. The code, the Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, whatever is your IDE, you push the code. This is an example of deploying Azure web apps, right? The pipelines, it goes to the web app. We have the definite task for doing that. And then the important thing is the line number 6 and the 7. So the application, the moment you deploy, you should have application insights in place. Your Azure monitor should be integrated. So if the application is crashing, you know an alert from there, and you can easily switch back your deployment to Azure DevOps, right? Similarly, in case of containers, the life is even easier, because if you go on from point number 6 to Azure Container Service, you all know that definitely, because the container inside is running within the cluster, right? So it can always throw you errors and give you an understanding whether your pods are running or not. So you can always have a quick view. Uh, Sorry, you can always have a quick view of your system. Like I am looking at my cluster right now. I know that uh, there is there is a primary namespace where what is going to be my view of each of these projects, right? How much memory and CPU is taking. The moment I see that there is a crash, something happening, not working, I should go back to my build stage, I should definitely open my project, which is ratings API. It's a container based application. I know, okay, I have done it. So what I can do basically, I can um, if I have the multiple runs here, right? So I can actually use this. So let me go to the release pipeline. And if my pipelines are all segregated with the reference, I can redeploy any one of the previous which was working. So I know release 2 had a problem. So I will go to release 1. I will select this and I will just deploy this one again without making any changes, right? So that's a direct deployment. So basically, you should have your architecture and this DevOps thing created in such a way that you can do all these things easily, right? Uh, And this is a complete view of how it should work. So you can see the inner loop is important. Inner loop is your developer loop. They all talk to each other, deploying applications, updating, deploying, and then ultimately when it goes through the channel, it goes through pipeline. It takes the container images from a registry, deploying onto the production cluster. Now, I'm not showing the dev. Okay, I think I should have shown you. Where is that diagram? Yeah, this is the one. Okay, so this is important. So you can see this is a more of a production scenario. I have the deployment going to be happening on AKS cluster. But before that, look at, if I can zoom it a bit, look at line number 6. The 6 is from GitHub Actions or Azure Pipelines. It coming to your dev test registry. The deployment happened. Your development and QA AKS clusters both are running separately with their own loop, right? They have connection to Cosmos DB or whatever. Doesn't matter. So when your QA is ready, what you are doing basically is nothing but from 8 to 10, you are running the pipeline for your production with the same image that you have actually deployed on your registry. So you now move look at the line on top where dev test container registry through Azure pipeline, passing the container image to the production registry. That's it. Your deployment will happen from there because you have a notification center that whenever container registry gets an image, you can start your build or you can start your production build manually also. Doesn't matter. But you are safe that it is tried, tested, has gone through all the loops and then coming into the play, right? Uh, so there are some 6, 7 examples I've given, all good architectures. You can go through it. And I believe, I don't know, I'm running out of time. I think so. Already 3 minutes past my time. But just wanted to highlight these processes at high level, short time for such a deep discussion. But yeah, I would wait for the questions. Um, I will stop here and we'll take the questions. If you have anything, please let me know. I will take some of the questions which I can see here. Shefali, is it good to take the questions now or uh,
Yes, we can take. There are two questions, I think.
yeah, so
So
common problem faced is that team members are not cross-functional and team members are pure dev or pure ops, so teams must learn both stuff without discrimination. Um, yeah, so basically, there are two things. As I said, if they are completely disparate teams, then also Azure DevOps is there, and you need to bring in people who are the DevOps architects, right? Ops architects. I'm not saying infra architects, operations guys. They can act as a bridge between them. They would be doing all the deployments, they would do the pull request validations, checks, and everything, right? That is the layer you have to bring in. But if the teams are cross functional, then your life is easy. That means then people can actually change the hats and then do it. But it's a challenge. I agree with you. But then the solution is also there. If hope that answers your question, RSA. To govern all this, should there be a horizontal yeah, I think that's what I just told you, right? Yes, exactly. So there should be a DevOps team or DevOps architect and people underneath so that who can manage or bridge between these two cross-functional teams. Yeah, right. Yeah. You will get the TPPT, Ashish. Yes. How to deploy SQL scripts in Azure DevOps, Santosh. So we have the DACPack files. So we have a task. If you guys can still see my screen, Um, your pipeline, are you familiar with DACPAC deployment? Then I can tell you quickly that there is a task available in Azure DevOps and even in GitHub as well, which allow you to bring in your DACPAC file, Azure SQL database deployment. You can use this, right? And that is SQL Server deployment on-prem or on Azure server. But this is the pass. You can bring in that task and then you can select your files, the DACPAC file, and it will be deployed. Uh, uh, Hope that answers your question, Santosh. Interesting to understand how database changes are rolled back in DevOps. Well, I think again, um, that's a great question. I would probably would request you to come back to me over email. My email is, by the way, is here, or it can be shared as well by the team. Um, where is my email?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, this is my email. You guys can note it down. So you can reach out to me over email. Who asked this question? Um, Naveen. So basically, yes, the rolling back of the changes. If you use DACPAC file and the one that I just shown you, it's easy. But then the problem is always your application might break, right? So that's the trickiest part of it. So where you need to basically have a plan properly. And if see the basic thing is your deployments, your pipeline should be different, right? If your pipelines are different and they are maintained in that way, so you can always do that and reduce the amount of error that can come in into this. We can talk about it if you reach out to us over email. How lower environment can integrate with Azure? uh, Sagar, can you please be a bit more, um, can they ask uh, unmuting themselves, or they can only ask over the chat, Shafali? How
Um,
lower environment? How
yeah, here
lower environment can integrate?
the
Yeah,
queries can be
sorry.
answered. They can ask here only in the chat, Manoj. And
Okay,
if
how lower environment can integrate with Azure? If you can tell me a bit more details, Sagar, over email. So basically, what happens here is uh, depending on the software that you are deploying, whether it is a container, it's fine. I mean, it's an AKS clustered and all your like for example, you could see my window, right? You could see my window that um, sorry for that. So you can see my window. I have different namespaces. Where are my namespaces? Yeah, you can see my different namespaces, Dave, and the primaries and all. So by the namespaces, I can basically manage all my clusters, different environments, lower environments, and then deploy onto the production whatever is needed. Similar thing is needed for all other services also. Like for example, app service, we have a slot option. So you can deploy onto dev slot and keyway slot and finally swap the slot with the production. Options are there. If you need to understand more, you can mail me in details. Yeah. Does Azure provides ways to monitor the customer user transaction? Or yes, absolutely. So that's a good question. Thanks. So basically, it is that's what I had shown in the diagram also, right? The application insights and the integration with application insights. So ideally, your whether it is a container-based application or non-container application, you should have this line number 8 on, or here line number 6 on, so that you can actually track and maintain these type of the functional stuff, that how the users are interacting and all that is inbuilt in Azure, obviously. And what you can do, if that gives some error, you can always, that's what I was showing you, you can always switch back your pipeline deployment again back to some other earlier version which was working and then deploy it again, right? So that is very much doable out of the box. Yes. To govern all these, yeah, I think I answered those questions all. Any further question, team? Please do let me know.
yeah, I think we are good, uh, Manojit. And thank you for this amazing session. I think all the questions got answered. And if there are more any questions, we are running out of time. So if people come back and pose their questions, so We'll be sharing that live URL here in the with you, so maybe you can answer them offline. Is that fine?
Sure. I think I can see RSS question also, but yeah, I know it is well beyond the time. So you can actually send me an email with this question. I will respond back. This is very much possible and we can do it. And
Yeah,
yeah, if there is any session plan, we will definitely plan for it. No issues. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Thank you for this wonderful session, Monoji. And
Thank you so much,
before,
Shefali.
yeah, so before we conclude today's session, few things to mention that as we all know that this meetup session is part of Azure Developer Community. So if you haven't joined uh, this community, you can visit the site azdev.community, and you can go through and about the upcoming sessions and all other information. So you can join your nearest community and be a part of this amazing uh, community. Also, apart from this, we are also running a very exciting activity. It's called Cloud Quizzing Challenge. It's a very fun and interesting live quizzing challenge where you can come and participate in live quizzes on Azure technologies. So our next quiz is tomorrow, that is 10 December. So if you haven't registered yet, you can go and register yourself. The site is cc.config.com. It's reflecting on your screen here. And also, if you top the leaderboard in the quizzes, you can get exciting prizes and goodies and more. So this is it. So thank you all for joining for today's session. And yeah, okay. Thank you, Monuji.
Thank you, Shefali. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone.